Morning and welcome on Facebook Live. You are on the mark. I am Marc Ernay, and to my left is the radio voice of the Brooklyn Nets. I almost cost myself $1 by saying New Jersey Nets. It was so long. Chris Carrino is with us. Thanks for being with us today. I want to start with the beginning of your story as it goes professionally. You graduated from Fordham, came out of WFUV like so many others before you, and so many since. If I'm correct, 1992.
Yes.
And somehow hooked up with the Nets broadcast team, and you're still there 25 years later.
I did. I have to go back to, I was an intern with the New York Giants radio broadcast back when they were on the old WNEW AM, if you remember that. Sinatra and the Standards, and then you had Giants football on the weekends, and worked with Bob Papa and Paul Dottino, a couple other Fordham guys who got me in there, and then they introduced me people at the Nets, and I started working part-time with the Nets in the 92-93 season. Chuck Daly was the head coach, and was part-time there for a while, went to the work for the Nets full-time in 1997, became the play-by-play voice in 2001.
When Bob moved on to the Giants.
Bob did. He was there were a number of guys there before him. I mean, there was Howard David, and Ian Eagle was on radio for a year, and Steve Albert and Bob, and then me. But I've been there the longest, I believe.
And you got to start the year they went to their first
My
final.
first two seasons, we went all the way to the NBA Finals. Oh. And I remember Brian McIntyre, a great PR guy for the league years ago, seeing me as a 31-year-old play-by-play guy in my first NBA Finals in 2002 and saying to me, hey, don't take it for granted. There are people that do this for 30, 40 years, never get an opportunity to call NBA Finals games. And I said, no, Brian, don't worry, I'm not taking it for granted. So when I saw him the next year in 2003, I said, Brian, I just want you to know I'm still not taking it for granted. But no, then it's, there have been some ups and downs since then. But yeah, I did get to do that my first 2 years.
We'll talk more about the Nets and the current affairs with the team as we move along. As you're talking about the NBA Finals in your first year, and it takes some guys forever to call the finals. I'm thinking of Pete Weber on the Nashville Predators, who's been doing hockey for about half a century.
Yeah, not for the Predators, but for others.
But finally gets to call a Stanley Cup
No,
Finals.
and you're at the mercy of the team, and and unfortunately, my coming to the Nets as the full-time play-by-play guy was also Jason Kidd's first year. Right. So I think, that actually had more to do with it. But I kind of rode his coattails.
You were the good luck charm.
Which turned out to be, to call those games when Jason was running the show was unbelievable. And, the first year I did it was Chick Hearn was still with the Lakers.
Right.
And I would saddle up next to Chick before games and just to talk to him, and that was as great an experience for me as even doing the NBA Finals were, and it almost was tantamount to him doing those Magic Johnson Showtime days. It was really a lot of fun.
All right, you're here to talk to us. We're going to talk about your foundation for I knew I'd have a problem with this. FSHD.
Yeah.
It would take me a half hour to tell people exactly what that is, so I'm going to let you do it.
Or say the other word, it might be even Facioscapulohumeral Dystrophy.
That's what I meant.
Is another mouthful. Well, it's a type of muscular dystrophy. Most people have heard of muscular dystrophy, but most have not heard of FSHD. It is a progressive muscle weakening disease. Affects people in a variety of ways. Mostly it's facial. Shoulder, scapular, and humeral, upper arms. It also extends to, in most cases, the legs in some kind, the hips, the back. There's no treatment, there's no cure. You're diagnosed with FSHD. The doctors say, hope for the best. Hopefully we'll have some kind of a treatment or a cure down the road. I was diagnosed when I was 23 years old, 1993. And that's what I was told. And you went to a neurologist 20 years later and you were told the same thing. Not that I knew that I could step in and all of a sudden now we'd find a cure. There were a lot of other people that are doing a lot of work on it already. But when I started in 2011 in getting involved in the research and in raising money, there were no pharmaceutical companies that were involved in it. And now there's about, I was told the number is about 22, because in the last decade, they have identified the cause of the disease. They've identified that it's the overexpression of DUX4, which is a gene that creates a protein that attacks the muscle. And what's been a positive for the FSHD community is that now all scientific research is targeted on combating DUX4, they call it DUX4. So it makes it a little simpler from a research standpoint, is that we can invest in projects that are combating DUX4. And now we're investing in projects that are going to try and find biomarkers in the body so that when you do clinical trials, you know if it's working or not. So there's an emphasis now on getting clinical trial ready, which is a great thing, because that means that we feel there may be something coming down the road that will need clinical trials, and we'll try, because you have to have a good clinical trial base for companies to come in and want to work on the disease, especially for a disease that affects maybe 20,000 people in the United States. You know, less than 1 million people worldwide.
Now, you started the foundation. ChrisCarrinoFoundation.org is the web address. You've got fundraisers galore. We'll talk about them in a second, but you were diagnosed in '93, and it wasn't until 2011 that you started the foundation. Now, what was the impetus to launch your own foundation? It's a pretty bold endeavor.
It is. You know, I'm up here at our studios, and I got a chance to talk with Boomer Esiason, who's done such great work with his cystic fibrosis foundation. And you know, many people didn't really know about cystic fibrosis. Now, everyone you turn to pretty much has heard of cystic fibrosis. There aren't that many more people with cystic fibrosis than FSHD in this country. But what Boomer's been able to do with his foundation is really brought it mainstream. It's helped them raise money and do things with it. So I've always tried to pick his brain. He was a role model for me. I came here in 2011 when we started, and I wanted to talk to him and sit down. And he shared his time with me and what to look for, the pitfalls, and give me some advice. So it is, and that was the one thing he said to me. You know, it's going to be on you. You're going to take it as far as your energy can take you. And it's a huge endeavor. So know what you're getting into. But you know, I kind of feel a responsibility to the FSHD community. I was doing a blog the other day, a podcast with someone, and they said, well, I Googled famous people with FSHD, and you're the only name that comes up. And I was like, well, number one, I don't think I'm not that famous, so if we're relying on that, I'm not going to be too helpful. But it just shows you how far we have to go to get FSHD mainstream, which can help then when people go out. You know, if I can sound the bell as much as I can, it helps every organization that's trying to raise money for FSHD. Because when you go to people and you say, oh, we're raising money for FSHD, and they don't know what it is, they go, ah, yeah, all right, you know, keep walking. But when people know, and they know the effects and how it affects people and how it can change people's lives, then maybe they have a little more compassion for it and will be more willing to help and to donate. And that's what we try to do. And you know, the real impetus for me to start was, you know, I go through this with my wife, Laura, and my son, Christopher. And while I was able to handle it and hide it a little bit more when the symptoms weren't as great, you know, I was able to just kind of pretend it didn't exist and go through life and try and be normal. And I really didn't want to get involved with seeing anybody else with it and that kind of thing. And it finally, though, I wasn't considering how they were feeling. And when it started to become a little more difficult, you know, my wife was saying, hey, you know, I'm here with you trying to help you, and I got to go through the day-to-day with you. And I feel like you don't want me to share it with anybody, and I'm kind of alone. But I want to be able to be open about it with people so that they can help. And I said, you know what, you're right. I'm going to look into what's out there, what I can do. I always, in the back of my mind, even for 20 years prior to that, I always said, when I make a name for myself, I'm going to try and do something that can help us with this disease. And I was always saying, well, the time's not right. I need to be on network television. I need to have more of a high profile. And Laura said to me, you know, you've accomplished a lot.
Yeah.
And you think you're not at a point where you need to be, but I think you are. And I shared her with my, my ideas with her about what I wanted to do, and dragged her into this as well with me. And we go through the stress and the trouble of doing what we do to try and put fundraisers together and make the money that we need so that we can fund research grants and things like that. And that's what we are. We're a volunteer organization. Everything we raise goes to research. And so it was the love of my wife and my family, and then recognizing where I can be a help, and that's kind of how we got to where we are today.
Speaking of the fundraising, you're in the middle of a pretty big fundraiser now.
Yeah.
The Coast to Coast cycling event started in Seattle over Memorial Day weekend, and will wind up in Brooklyn, I assume somewhere near Barclays Center on July 19th.
It will. It's going to actually end right at Barclays Center. Thanks to Brett Yormark and the folks at Barclays for allowing us to kind of cruise up Flatbush Avenue and finish up in the atrium, and we'll have a big event there on July 19th, late in the afternoon. Yeah, I was out in Seattle Memorial Day weekend. I was out there to drop everybody off and hook up with a group, FSH group out in Seattle called Friends of FSH Research.
Okay. And
they organize the events out there and at the Space Needle, where we all launched from. And they're a sponsor of our event, along with Bay Ridge Toyota and Vigon and Invent, which is a great company that's helping us with our events as well, and on the bike tour. So we have a van that's with them. We have 6 riders that are doing the entire ride. Others are joining for stages.
Okay.
I've got my board members. I got Tim Capstraw, my radio partner, who's going to be going out to Salt Lake City next week to meet up with them, and then my brother-in-law, Dan, who'll be going out there in Denver and meeting up with them, and then I'm going to join him in St. Louis, and we're going to, kind of give them support along the way. But what's great about it is they're hitting different parts of the country where we have research going on and where there's patients. They're staying with people in the community. They're staying in people's homes, in schools, in YMCAs, and churches. They're really reaching out. It's not a race. It's a kind of a goodwill tour of FSHD. And we hope we can raise some money. We hope we can raise some awareness, like we were talking about how necessary that is. And on our Facebook page, after you're done with this, you click over to the Chris Carrino Foundation Facebook page. There's all videos of, they go live every couple of times a day, showing you where they are, some beautiful scenery. They're in Reno, Nevada today. They have a much-earned day off after about 8 straight days on the road. They're meeting with a researcher there, Peter Jones, who we funded, and he made some great breakthroughs. And he continues to do great work in FSHD research, and he's housing riders at his house, and and bringing them on a tour of the facility, and so it's great for them to get a chance to see that and kind of touch the FSHD community along the way.
So that wraps up at Barclays Center on the 19th of July, and then the 20th you have your big annual dinner dance.
Yeah, it's our 7th annual dinner dance, which is just a great party that we have at Russo's on the Bay out in Howard Beach. Great facility, and that will be on July 20th. So I would love people to come out. It's not a boring speeches event. I give a speech, but we're trying. No, we just but we have a dance floor, and we have a great DJ and Stephen Reedus, and the food is unbelievable. The cocktail hour, people rave about the cocktail. That's why they keep coming back. And we give people a good time, and it's open to anybody. So if anybody wants to come that night, it's a Thursday night, July 20th. Just go to our website, chriscarinofoundation.org, and you can join us.
And we will talk about the nets.
And by the way, Mark, I want to show you this too, because I'm going to present you with the official shirt that they are wearing on the bike tour.
Let's just show that up to everybody.
That's the back of the shirt, where it tells people how to donate.
Can everybody see it?
They can text C2C to 71777.
Flip it around. This is the front.
Yeah, the front, and it's got a little Space Needle and the Brooklyn Bridge.
It's a good-looking shirt.
Yeah, it's a nice show. Wear it with pride.
Thank you. I will.
That's the official
when I get back on my bike
tour shirt.
Hopefully tomorrow.
All right.
If it stops raining. So you have this bike event going on, straight into the dinner dance. Then you get a couple of days actually to maybe decompress. Then you go right into your broadcasting camp with Capstraw
You reminded me
at Montclair.
Yes, we are. Iron Eagle and Bruce Beck had run a camp, broadcasting camp for young aspiring broadcasters for many years. Bruce went on to do his own thing out in Westchester, I believe, and Ian decided, not to do this anymore. But
well, he does need a few days off.
Ian's got he's in Paris, right? I texted him last night. He's in Paris right now. The tennis channel. Yeah, he doesn't stop. So he needed some time, and the guys who run the camp over the years, I had been up as a speaker there every year, and they kind of reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in taking over the camp?" I think they liked what I'd done before, and I know them, and I thought I'd give it a shot. We'll see how it goes. But I think we've had good. It's sports broadcasting camps. You can go on Twitter, on Facebook, on the internet, sportsbroadcastingcamps.com. And sign up, and it's going to be a week of, I don't like to, I enjoy talking to young people in broadcasting. People want to do what we do. You probably get questions all the time.
Yeah, I don't need the competition.
No, yeah, but
please don't do it.
I was always a little, how do you say, I didn't like to sell it as, well, we're having a camp, or even when I go to speak to students, where here's what you have to do and you can become a sports broadcaster. Right. No, I sell it as, we're going to teach you things, how to be a more effective communicator.
Right.
And you're going to learn what it's like to be a sports broadcaster and what it entails. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's an incredibly difficult business to make a living in.
Yeah.
So, but not to discourage you, the ones who are really good, if you have a passion for it and you have a talent for it, we're going to help you hone those skills, and you may be one of that lucky 1% or whatever it is that can go out and make a good living in this business. But for the rest of you, this is something that we're going to teach you how to, maybe I think, what the strongest skill you can have going out into the workforce. And that's being an effective, confident communicator.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't care what business you're in. If you can do that, you can be successful in whatever you are. So I think from that standpoint, that's how I kind of sell it to the parents. Is, I understand the kid may want to learn about the behind the scenes of sports broadcasting, which is fun, and it's summer camp. If that's what you're interested in, you want to do that, great. Maybe you have a child that really shows promise and we can get them over the top. But this is your son or daughter is going to learn some life lessons at that age between 13 and 18. It's a good week, I think, well spent.
Yeah, and I took the syllabus, if you will, of the week that you guys do, and we had a camp at Hofstra a few years that Ed Engels ran forever, and I actually turned it into a semester at St. John's in a sports broadcasting class for the last 12 years. Yeah. So you guys condense everything into 1 week. I get 13 weeks to do it.
Yeah, and there's still, I wouldn't say come to our camp and you don't need to go to college.
No.
But
go to college.
Go to WFUV in Fordham
or WRHU.
Where is that? That's Hofstra. Yeah, like that.
Or St. John's.
Yeah, I heard Syracuse has produced some.
Yeah, we've heard some pretty
guys,
good people from
broadcasters
Syracuse
as well.
I put it off long enough. We have to talk about the Nets.
Don't make it like that's such a bad thing.
Well, no, talking about basketball is great. Yes. Talking about the Nets and the draft that's coming up in a couple of weeks at Barclays Center, where the Nets will not have the #1 pick because of the deal they made with the Celtics. How tough was it for you as the play-by-play guy every night on the radio to talk about the season that was this past?
Mark, listen, I'm fortunate enough to go watch NBA basketball for a living.
Yeah.
I don't care how the wins and losses. That's still a great, and speak to people on the radio. It's a great job. I have a great partner that I work with, Tim Capstraw, and we have a ball doing these games, and I hope it comes out on the air. And we try and make it entertaining for anybody who's listening, regardless of the score or the result. Right. But I'll say this: what they've done in the past, the draft picks, the trades that were made, it's water under the bridge. It's done. It's gone. You have the situation the way it is. The organization right now, I think, is in great hands.
Yes.
It always has kind of been from a business side, and now the basketball side. And listen, Billy King and the group that was there before, they were given the mandate to kind of swing for the fences, and it didn't work out. And maybe they gave up too much, but who's to say? How do you, unless you were in those meetings and those trade, it's hard to say. But they took a shot. It didn't work out. This group that's in there now, led by Sean Marks and his team, and the coaching staff and Kenny Atkinson and his group, it is as good a group of people as I've ever been around in my career. And I think you invest in people, and I think that the people they have running the basketball side of things right now, if there's a way to get out of this in a responsible manner that can set them up for success down the road, for a long period of success, not just maybe 1 year get hot, it's these guys.
Yeah.
I really do feel that way. And the group that they had this year, there were a lot of guys that were not household names, we know. But they still rallied late in the year. I mean, from the All-Star break on, when they got Jeremy Lin back, I mean, they played almost 500 ball.
Yeah.
So and they were a competitive group every night. And I think that was that's a testament to those players and the coaching staff and management. So, whereas, see, last year to me wasn't as bad as the year prior to that.
Right.
Because the year prior to that, you'd had Lionel Hollins start the year, and the team just didn't respond, and he gets fired, and you have new management taking over mid-year. Yeah. You had a roster full of players that we knew half of them wouldn't even forget about not being on the Nets the next year. They wouldn't be in the league the next year, and if you looked, they weren't. And you had Tony Brown who takes over as the interim, and wisely, I mean, Sean Marks is saying, well, we're going to shut down our valuable assets to any guys we have. And look, they shut down Thaddeus Young late in the year. They ended up trading him, turning him into Karis LeVert, who's going to be part of their future going forward. So there were a lot of decisions made in that end of the year that made that kind of like a death march to the end of the year. And that was a really difficult season because that felt like an end. That felt like we were coming to the end of something. Last year, to me at least, I felt that it was the beginning of something. And I don't know where that something is going to be. Right. But I'll be candid with you when it's bad and when it's good. And I really feel like although they didn't win a lot of games this year, the infrastructure is there for them to set themselves up for I think, some success down the road, and hopefully leading into where you become one of those organizations that can year after year just sort of
and
push success
I
forward.
think we would like to see the Knicks too, and the Nets,
Yeah.
on that level where they're in contention
And a lot of
to at least make the playoffs.
Well,
every year.
and I think you're in an interesting time right now in the NBA, and people are seeing this now with the NBA Finals going on, and Golden State, all of a sudden, the first two games in the NBA Finals against a really good Cavalier team, they're making it look easy. And I think it's making other teams around the league look at their situation and go, why should we risk a quick fix when we can't compete with Golden State? And and in the East, we have trouble competing with Cleveland right now, as long as LeBron's there. So, hey, let's do this the right way. Let's take a step back. Let's take our time here and build the right way. Let's not take a risk to try and get better quickly just because, because it might not make any difference. Kevin Durant being in Golden State has kind of changed that thinking with everybody. I don't know if it's great for the league in the next couple of years, but maybe down the road teams have, done it the right way and been more responsible, and it might make for a stronger group of teams that can contend a few years down the road. All
right, let's do one last reference, if we will, to the Chris Carrino Foundation, chriscarrinofoundation.org, raising money for FSHD. It's a good thing I get paid to talk for a living.
You got that, Mark.
Yes. Thank you for joining us.
Mark, thank you.
Mr. Carrino,
always a
pleasure.
Good to see you.
That's Chris Carrino. I'm Marc Ernay, and you're on the Mark.